The red giant star above Valanus Prime grew larger each day. Elder Morgeth stood at the observation deck of the High Council building, watching the angry orange light fill more of the sky than it should. The star was dying, and when it died, it would take his world with it. "The atmospheric processors are failing faster than we predicted," said Talvin Crix, the lead scientist. His blue skin had turned pale with worry. "We have maybe 6 months before the air becomes too thin to breathe." Morgeth closed his 4 eyes. The Kelthari had ruled this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had built cities that floated in the clouds and machines that could bend space itself, but they could not stop their sun from dying. "Have you finished the message?" Morgeth asked. "Yes, Elder. The distress signal is ready. I have written it in 17 different languages. Every major civilization in the galaxy will understand it." The message was simple. The Kelthari needed help. Their world was dying, and they could not save their 2.3 billion people alone. They needed ships, technology, and safe places for their population to live. Talvin activated the massive transmitter. The signal shot out into space at faster than light speed, reaching across the galaxy in waves. It would arrive at the Zephyrian Empire first, then the Crystalline Collective, then the Void Swimmers and dozens of other advanced civilizations. "How long before we get a response?" Morgeth asked. "The Zephyrians should respond within 3 days. The others will follow soon after. They understand what it means when an ancient civilization calls for help." But 3 days passed with no response. Then a week. Then 2 weeks. The Zephyrian Empire received the message and discussed it in their crystal halls. "The Kelthari always thought they were better than us," the Emperor said. "Let them solve their own problems." The Crystalline Collective analyzed the signal with their computer minds. They calculated the cost of helping versus the benefit to themselves. The numbers did not add up. They decided to ignore the message. The Void Swimmers, who lived in the empty spaces between stars, simply did not care about planetary civilizations. The message meant nothing to them. One by one, every major power in the galaxy made the same choice. The Kelthari had been proud and unfriendly for thousands of years. They had refused to share their technology or join galactic alliances. Now, in their time of need, the galaxy turned its back on them. Far away, in a small solar system on the edge of civilized space, Dr. Hannah Yoon sat at her workstation on Europa. The moon orbited Jupiter in the human solar system, and Hannah worked at the Deep Space Monitoring Station. Her job was to listen for signals from other civilizations. Most days were quiet. Humans had only been traveling between stars for 300 years. They were still new to the galaxy, still learning about the older civilizations that had been exploring space since before Earth had complex life. But today was different. Hannah's equipment picked up something unusual, a signal in multiple languages carrying mathematical proofs to show it was intelligent. She worked for hours to decode it, her heart racing as she understood what she was reading. "This is incredible," she whispered. "This is a cry for help." She called her supervisor immediately. Within an hour, the message had reached Earth's government. Within 6 hours, it had reached every human colony and space station. The response was immediate. Captain Daeho Kim commanded the UES Harmony, the flagship of humanity's Third Fleet. They had been traveling toward the frontier to establish new colonies when the order came through. "Change course immediately," Admiral Sujin Kong told him over the communication link. "Proceed to the Kelthari system at maximum speed. Render all possible assistance." "Admiral, our mission is to establish Colony Site Zeta 7. The colonists are expecting us. The colonists can wait, Captain. There are people who need help right now. Deho looked at the star charts. The Kelthari system was 3 weeks away at full speed. It would delay their colony mission by months. It would cost enormous amounts of fuel and resources. The Kelthari were aliens, not even human. But the order was clear, and Deho understood why it had been given. Humans had a saying, "When someone needs help, you help them." It did not matter who they were or what they had done before. All ships, change course for the Kelthari system, Deho ordered. Maximum speed. The Third Fleet consisted of 47 ships, cruisers, cargo vessels, hospital ships, and engineering platforms. It was not the biggest fleet in human space, but it was what they had available. Dr. Hana Yoon joined the fleet as their alien language expert. She had studied 17 different alien languages, including the harmonic frequencies that the Kelthari used to communicate. During the 3-week journey, she worked to improve the translation programs. "What do we know about these people?" Deho asked during a briefing. "The Kelthari are old," Hana explained. "They have been a space-traveling civilization for 10,000 years. Their technology is far ahead of ours. They are known to be proud and somewhat unfriendly to younger species. Have they ever helped anyone else?" "Not that we know of. They prefer to stay isolated." "Then why is no one helping them now?" Hana was quiet for a moment. "I think that might be exactly why no one is helping them. The journey to Valanis Prime was hard. As they got closer to the dying star, solar storms battered the human ships. The radiation was stronger than anything they had planned for. 3 ships had to shut down their main engines to prevent overloading. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the planet," the communications officer reported. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was strange and musical, full of harmonic tones that human ears found difficult to follow. But the translation program worked. "Unknown vessels. Identify yourselves. This is Kelthari space. This is Captain Deho Kim of the human fleet. We received your distress signal. We are here to help." There was a long pause. "Humans. You are the ones who responded to our call. Yes, what do you need?" Another pause, longer this time. We did not expect humans to come. We expected the Zephyrians, or the Crystalline Collective, or the Ethereal Councils. They did not come. We did. How can we help you?" On the planet's surface, Elder Morgeth stared at the communication device. Humans, the youngest species in the galaxy, barely 3 centuries into space travel. Their technology was primitive compared to Kelthari science. Their ships were small and crude, but they had come. When the ancient and powerful civilizations had turned away, the humans had traveled across the galaxy to help strangers. "Elder Morgeth," Talvin said quietly. "Their ships are already being damaged by the solar radiation. If they stay here long, they will not be able to leave." Morgeth looked up at the angry red star that was killing his world. Then he looked at the small human ships that had come so far to help. "Tell them to proceed to Orbital Station 7, he said. "We will meet them there." As the human fleet moved into orbit around the dying world, Deho Kim studied the readings his sensors were giving him. The planet below was home to 2.3 billion people. His entire fleet could maybe evacuate 50,000. It should have been impossible. But humans had learned long ago that impossible just meant you had not figured out how to do it yet. "Dr. Yoon," he said, "prepare the first contact team. We have work to do. The orbital station hung in space like a metal flower, its silver petals reflecting the angry light of the dying star. Captain Dae-ho Kim watched through the viewport as his shuttle approached the docking bay. Behind him sat Dr. Hana Yoon Lafontaine, Commander Sung-min Park, and Dr. Bo-young Lee. They were about to meet an alien civilization face to face. "Remember," Hana said, checking her translation device one more time. "The Kelthari communicate through harmonic frequencies. Our voices will sound harsh and crude to them. Try to speak slowly and clearly." The shuttle docked with a soft bump. The airlock cycled, and the first thing that hit them was the smell, something like flowers mixed with metal. The air was thicker than Earth normal and slightly warm. Elder Morgeth waited for them in the reception chamber. He was tall, nearly 7 feet, with blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. His 4 eyes watched the humans carefully as they entered. Behind him stood several other Kelthari, including a young engineer named Keth Ara-Zil. "Welcome to our station," Morgeth said, his voice creating musical tones that the translation device turned into words. "I am Elder Morgeth, leader of the High Council." "Thank you for meeting with us," Dae-ho replied. "I am Captain Kim. These are my officers. We are here to help in any way we can." Morgeth's expression was hard to read, but there was something like confusion in his 4 eyes. "I must ask, why did you come? Your species is young, your technology limited. This crisis is beyond what your capabilities should allow." Dr. Bo-young Lee stepped forward. "Because you needed help," she said, simply. The Kelthari exchanged looks. Keth Ara-Zil made a sound like musical laughter, but not the pleasant kind. "You traveled across the galaxy because we needed help?" she asked. "What do you gain from this? What territory do you claim? What technology do you demand in return?" "Nothing," Hana said. "We gain nothing. We just help." Keth Ara's skin color shifted to a darker blue, a sign of anger they would learn later. "Impossible. No species acts without benefit to themselves. What is your real purpose here?" Lataire's commander Sung-min Park looked confused. "Our real purpose is to help you save your people. What other purpose would there be?" The meeting continued for 2 hours. The Kelthari could not understand why humans had come. They kept asking about hidden motives, secret agendas, what humans expected to receive. The humans kept giving the same answer. They had come to help, and they wanted nothing in return. Finally, Elder Morgeth called for a break. The humans were shown to quarters, while the Kelthari discussed among themselves. "They must be lying," Keth Ara said. "No civilization sends its entire fleet across the galaxy for strangers without expecting something back." "Perhaps," Morgeth replied. "But consider this. If they wanted to conquer us, they could simply wait for our world to die. If they wanted our technology, they could demand it in exchange for rescue. Instead, they offer help freely." "It makes no sense." "No," Morgeth agreed. "It makes no sense at all." While the Kelthari debated, the human fleet worked. Captain Dae-ho had deployed survey teams to study the planet's atmosphere. The reports were worse than expected. The atmospheric processors are failing in cascade patterns, Sung-min reported. "Each failure puts more stress on the remaining units. At current rates, total atmospheric collapse will occur in 4 months, not 6. How many people can we evacuate with our current ships?" Dae-ho asked. "Maybe 50,000 if we pack them in like cargo. That leaves over 2 billion behind." Dr. Bo Young was studying the medical data. The Kelthari have a different atmosphere mix than humans. Our life support systems will need major modifications to keep them alive during transport. Hana was working on a different problem. Captain, I think I know why the other civilizations did not respond. I have been reading Kelthari history. They have always believed they were superior to younger species. They have refused to join galactic alliances, share technology, or provide aid to others. The galaxy is letting them die because they think the Kelthari deserve it. Do you think they deserve it? Deho asked. I think nobody deserves to watch their world die, Hana replied. The conversation was interrupted by alarms. A massive solar flare erupted from the dying star, sending waves of radiation toward the fleet. 3 human ships were caught in the worst of it. UES Courage is losing power, the communications officer reported. UES Determination and UES Hope are also showing critical damage. Can they maneuver to safety? Negative, sir. Their engines are down. Deho did not hesitate. All ships, emergency rescue formation. Get those crews out of there. The rescue operation took 6 hours. Human ships flew into the radiation storm again and again, pulling damaged vessels to safety. When it was over, the UES Courage was a wreck, and 12 crew members were in medical bay with radiation poisoning. The Kelthari watched it all on their sensors. They are risking their lives for their own people, Cathara observed. Yes, Morgeth said quietly, but they risked their lives for us first. That evening, Elder Morgeth requested another meeting. This time his tone was different. Captain Kim, I owe you an apology. We questioned your motives because we could not understand them. In our experience, species act only for their own benefit. Sometimes helping others is a benefit by itself, Deho replied. We are beginning to understand this. Tell me honestly, do you believe you can save our people? Deho looked at his officers. The math was brutal. Even if every human ship was converted to carry refugees, they could not evacuate even 1% of the Kelthari population. I don't know, he said. But we will try. Why? You barely know us. We have never helped humanity. We have been unfriendly to younger species. Why would you risk everything for us? Dr. Bo Young answered. On Earth, we have a saying. When someone is drowning, you do not ask if they are a good person before you jump in the water. You just jump. Morgeth was quiet for a long moment. On Valonis Prime, we have children in schools, families in homes, artists and scientists and workers. They are not responsible for our government's decisions. They are just people who want to live. Exactly, Hana said. There is something you should know, Morgeth continued. Our technology is more advanced than yours. Our scientists might be able to help with solutions you have not considered, if you are willing to work with us as equals, rather than as saviors and the saved. Captain Deho smiled, the first genuine smile since arriving in the system. Elder Morgeth, we would be honored to work with you. Cathara stepped forward. Her skin color had shifted to a lighter blue, curiosity instead of anger. I am an engineer. I have studied your ship designs from our sensor readings. Your fusion reactors are crude but powerful. Our atmospheric processors are efficient but failing. Perhaps together we can find a solution. Sung-min finished. As the meeting ended and the humans returned to their ships, Elder Morgeth stood alone at the observation window. The dying star filled the sky, but for the first time in months he felt something like hope. On the planet below, emergency broadcasts were telling the population about the human fleet. The reactions were mixed. Some Kelthari were grateful. Others were insulted that such a young species had come to help them. But as reports of human sacrifice and dedication spread, more and more Kelthari began to ask a different question. If these humans were willing to risk everything for strangers, what kind of people were they? And what did that say about the galaxy? That had ignored Kelthari cries for help? The answers to those questions would change everything. Chief Petty Officer Jinwoo Choi stood at the edge of the shuttle bay, looking down at the dying world below. Volanus Prime looked sick from orbit. Brown clouds swirled in the atmosphere where blue skies should have been. The oceans had turned gray from atmospheric contamination. "First team, gear check," Jinwoo called out. His voice was calm, but inside he felt the weight of what they were about to do. 47 humans were going down to a planet where the air was becoming poison, and the ground shook from solar radiation. Dr. Kyung-hee Nam adjusted her environmental suit's sensor pack. As the fleet's atmospheric specialist, she would be studying the failing processors while the rescue teams worked. "Atmospheric pressure is down 12% from normal," she reported. "Radiation levels are triple what our suits are rated for." "How long can we stay down there?" Jinwoo asked. 6 hours maximum. After that, the suits will start failing." Jinwoo nodded. 6 hours to save as many people as they could. It was not much time, but it was what they had. The shuttle ride down was rough. Solar winds buffeted the small craft as they descended through the poisoned atmosphere. Through the viewport, Jinwoo could see the Kelthari cities below. They were beautiful, even in their dying. Crystalline spires that caught and reflected light, flowing curves that seemed to grow from the ground like plants. But between the cities he could see the atmospheric processors. Massive machines, the size of mountains. They had kept Volanus Prime's air breathable for thousands of years. Now, one by one, they were failing. "Touchdown in 30 seconds, the pilot announced. The landing zone was near the city of Veltar, where an atmospheric processor had failed completely 2 days ago. The local government had been trying to evacuate the area, but transportation was limited. Thousands of Kelthari were stranded in a zone where the air was already too thin to breathe safely. As soon as the shuttle touched down, Jinwoo's team went to work. They had brought portable atmosphere generators, small human machines that could create breathable air in limited areas. It was not a permanent solution, but it would keep people alive while they worked on evacuation. The first Kelthari they encountered was an elderly female named Morala. She was sitting beside a group of children, her 4 eyes dim with exhaustion. When she saw the humans approaching, she tried to stand, but stumbled. "Please," she said in broken standard Galactic. "The children, they need—" "We know," Jinwoo said gently. He activated a portable atmosphere generator and placed it beside the group. Clean air began flowing immediately. The children's breathing became easier within minutes. Dr. Kyung-hee was studying the failed atmospheric processor. The machine was enormous, taller than most human buildings and covered with complex crystalline arrays. But something about its design caught her attention. "This is interesting," she muttered, scanning the processor with her instruments. "The Kelthari design is incredibly efficient, but it depends on perfect coordination between all units. When one fails, it puts stress on all the others." She called Captain Daeho on her communicator. "Captain, I think I understand the problem. The Kelthari processors are like a chain. They are only as strong as the weakest link. But what if we could supplement them? What do you mean? Human fusion reactors are not efficient, but they are powerful. What if we used our reactors to power additional atmosphere scrubbers? We could buy time to develop a permanent solution. There was a pause. Dr. Nam, the power requirements for something like that would drain our entire fleet. We would not have enough energy left to escape the system. I know, sir. Another pause. Longer this time. Send me the technical specifications. We will study it. While Kyung-hee worked on her calculations, Jin-Woo's rescue teams spread throughout the evacuation zone. They found families huddled in buildings, workers trying to maintain critical systems, and children separated from their parents in the chaos. The most difficult rescue came when they found a school that had been cut off by a ground collapse. 30 Kelthari children and their teachers were trapped in a building that was slowly sinking into an unstable crater. The ground could give way completely at any moment, reported specialist Eun-jung. Geological sensors show a 73% chance of total collapse if we try to extract them. Jin-Woo looked at the readings on his scanner. The smart thing to do would be to call for heavier equipment and try to stabilize the ground first, but that would take hours they did not have. The children's air supply was already running low. We go in now, Jin-Woo decided. Chief, the risk. There are children in there, Jin-Woo said firmly. We go in now. The rescue took 3 hours. Human teams had to dig through collapsed rubble while the ground shook beneath them. Twice, sections of the building collapsed, forcing them to find new routes. The Kelthari teachers helped as much as they could, but their species was not built for heavy physical work. The breakthrough came when they reached the youngest group of children. Among them was a small Keltari child named Veltar Mon, barely old enough to walk. He had been crying for hours, scared and struggling to breathe in the thin air. When Jin-Woo picked up the child and activated a personal air supply for him, Veltar stopped crying and looked up with large, trusting eyes. In that moment, broadcast across Kelthari communication networks by news crews covering the rescue, the galaxy saw something remarkable. A human soldier, his environmental suit damaged, and his own air supply running low, sharing his oxygen with an alien child he had never met before. The image spread across Keltari society like wildfire. Here was proof that the humans had not come for territory or technology or political advantage. They had come because they believed that all life was worth saving. All 31 Kelthari were successfully evacuated from the collapsed school. As the last shuttle lifted off from the unstable ground, the entire area collapsed into a crater, 50 meters deep. Back on the orbital station, Elder Morgeth watched the rescue footage with a heavy heart. They risked their lives for our children, he said to Catharazil. Their own people could have died to save ours. I do not understand them, Cathara admitted. Their logic makes no sense. They gain nothing from this sacrifice. Perhaps, Morgeth said quietly, that is exactly the point. Dr. Kyung-hee's report reached Captain Daeho that evening. Her proposal was ambitious beyond anything humans had ever attempted. They would link all human fusion reactors together and use them to power massive atmospheric scrubbers. The scrubbers would clean the air while the remaining Kelthari processors worked to maintain atmospheric pressure. It was theoretically possible, but the energy requirements were staggering. Every human ship would have to operate beyond its design limits. There would be no power left for life support, weapons, or escape velocity. If the plan failed, the entire human fleet would be stranded in a dying system. Daeho called a meeting. Of all ship captains, the plan will almost certainly leave us stranded here, he explained. Even if it works perfectly, we will not have enough power left to return home. We will be dependent on Kelthari technology to get us out of this system. Captain So Young of the UES Determination spoke first. Captain, my crew has already voted. We knew the risks when we came here. We help these people no matter what it costs. One by one, every captain in the fleet agreed. 47 human ships, representing humanity's entire Third Fleet, committed to a plan that would likely strand them forever in an alien star system. When Elder Morgeth learned of the human decision, he was speechless for several minutes. They would sacrifice their entire fleet for us? He finally asked. Yes, Hana Yun confirmed. That is what humans do. But why? We are not your people. This is not your world. You owe us nothing, Dr. Bo Young answered. Elder Morgeth, on Earth, we have a belief. We are all connected, every living being in the universe. When one of us suffers, we all suffer. When one of us is saved, we are all saved. Morgeth looked around the room at the faces of his people. Ketha Azil was staring at the humans with something like wonder. Other Kelthari engineers were nodding slowly, beginning to understand. You are willing to strand yourselves here to save us, Morgeth said. The least we can do is help you succeed. For the first time in Kelthari history, their scientists began, working as equals with a younger species. Human industrial power combined with Kelthari precision technology. Engineering teams worked around the clock, sharing knowledge that both species had guarded jealously for centuries. As the massive atmospheric restoration project began, something unprecedented happened across the galaxy. News of humanity's sacrifice reached other civilizations. Some dismissed it as stupidity. Others began to ask uncomfortable questions about their own decisions. But on Volanus Prime, as the first human-powered atmospheric scrubbers came online, and the air began to clear, both species learned something new about what was possible when people chose to help each other instead of helping only themselves. The warning came through subspace communication just as the atmospheric restoration project reached its most critical phase. Admiral Sujin Kang's face appeared on Captain Dae-Ho Kim's screen, her expression grim. Captain, I have disturbing news. From Earth. The Colonial Council is in emergency session. Several major colonies are threatening to leave the Federation if we continue what they call wasting resources on aliens. Dae-Ho felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. What exactly are they saying, Admiral? Colony Titan 7 has officially declared they will seek independence if the Third Fleet is not recalled immediately. New Seoul and Busan Station are considering similar actions. They claim we are abandoning human expansion for the sake of strangers. On the planet below, Engineer Woo-Sung Lim was pushing human fusion reactors far beyond their design specifications. The massive atmospheric scrubbers were working, but the energy demands were creating cascading failures throughout the human fleet. Reactor 3 is operating at 140% capacity, reported his assistant. The containment field is showing stress fractures. Can we reduce the load? Woo-Sung asked. Not without shutting down Scrubber Array 7. That would affect the air quality for 500,000 Kelthari. Woo-Sung made the decision that would define his career. Keep the scrubbers running. We will find another way to manage the reactor stress. It was a choice being made throughout the human fleet. Again and again, human crew members chose to risk their own safety to maintain the life support systems that were keeping Volanus Prime habitable. Kelthari military leader Mordak Fell had been suspicious of human motives from the beginning. As head of planetary security, it was his job to be paranoid about alien intentions. But the more he studied human history and culture, the more disturbed he became. "This makes no sense," he told his aide while reviewing human historical records. "Look at their wars. They fight for principles, not just territory. Look at their economics. They give aid to disasters with no expectation of return. Look at their laws. They have protections for people who cannot protect themselves." "Perhaps it is all deception, Commander." "No," Mordak said slowly. "Deception this complete would require their entire species to be acting for centuries. This is not deception. This is who they are." The realization horrified him. The Kelthari had always believed that compassion was weakness, that mercy was inefficiency. But here was an entire species that had built its civilization on principles the Kelthari considered foolish, and that species had become strong enough to cross the galaxy to help strangers. The crisis deepened when 3 human ships suffered catastrophic power failures simultaneously. The UES Courage, still damaged from the earlier solar flare, finally lost main power completely. The UES Determination and UES Hope followed within hours as their overtaxed reactors shut down. Captain So Young called Captain Dae-ho from the drifting Determination. "Captain, we have total power failure. Life support is on emergency backup only." "How long do you have?" "Maybe 18 hours. But here is the thing. We still have backup power left. We can either use it for life support, or we can route it to the atmospheric processors." Dae-ho felt his heart stop. "Captain So Young, you cannot be suggesting—" "My crew has already voted, Captain. Unanimous decision. We keep the processors running." The same conversation was happening on the UES Hope and the drifting UES Courage. 300 human crew members, facing death in the cold of space, chose to use their remaining power to keep breathing apparatus running for aliens they had never met. When news of this decision reached Volanus Prime, something unprecedented happened. Kelthari volunteers, for the first time in their civilization's history, began working directly alongside humans. Catharazil led the first group of Kelthari engineers to the human fleet. "We cannot let them die for us," she announced. "If they are willing to share their lives, we must be willing to share our knowledge." The combination proved revolutionary. Kelthari precision technology merged with human industrial determination created solutions neither species could have achieved alone. New power distribution systems that were both efficient and robust, atmospheric scrubbers that could adapt to changing conditions, emergency life support systems that worked for both species. Working 18-hour shifts, the combined teams achieved something miraculous. They stabilized the atmospheric restoration system while simultaneously developing backup power systems for the failing human ships. But the greatest breakthrough came from the youngest member of the team, Veltar Mon, the Kelthari child that Jin Woo Choi had rescued, had been visiting the orbital station with his school class. The child was fascinated by human technology and kept asking questions about why human machines were so different from Kelthari designs. "Human machines are strong but not efficient," observed Dr. Kyung-hee Nam, trying to explain in simple terms. "Kelthari machines are efficient but not strong. Why not make machines that are both?" the child asked. It was such a simple question that it took the adults several minutes to realize what he was suggesting. Human and Kelthari technology were not just different. They were complementary. Combined properly, they could create systems far superior to either species working alone. Dr. Minho Jong, the human scientist leading the project's final phase, worked with Kelthari engineers to design hybrid atmospheric processors. The new machines used human-style robust power systems with Kelthari-style efficient processing arrays. The first hybrid processor came online 3 weeks later. It was more powerful than any atmospheric processor ever built, capable of cleaning air faster and more efficiently than anything either species had imagined possible. As word of the successful collaboration spread, it created shock waves throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire, which had dismissed the Kelthari plea for help, suddenly announced they were closely monitoring the situation and were prepared to provide assistance if needed. The Crystalline Collective calculated the political benefits of associating with the rescue mission and offered retroactive support for the humanitarian effort. The Void Swimmers, who had never cared about planetary civilizations before, suddenly expressed interest in studying human Kelthari cooperation. But the most significant response came from the oldest civilization in the galaxy. The ethereal councils, beings of pure energy who had existed since before most stars were born, sent a message requesting direct communication with human leadership. Ambassador Tae-Young Shin, humanity's senior diplomat, found herself facing the most important diplomatic contact in human history. The collective voice, speaking for beings older than recorded time, appeared before her as shifting patterns of light and energy. Humanity is unexpected, the collective voice said. We had concluded that mercy was an inefficient trait that would be eliminated by natural selection in any successful spacefaring species. You were wrong, Tae-Young replied simply. Perhaps. Or perhaps we had simply forgotten what mercy looks like. We are very old, Ambassador Shin. We have seen species rise and fall for millions of years. We had begun to believe that survival required abandoning compassion. What do you believe now? The collective voice was quiet for a long moment. We believe that your species may teach us something we had forgotten, something about what it means to be truly alive. Back on Volanus Prime, the atmospheric restoration project was nearing completion. The hybrid processors were working perfectly, creating a sustainable solution that would keep the planet habitable for millennia to come. Elder Morgeth stood beside Captain Dae-Ho Kim on the observation deck of the orbital station. Below them, the planet's skies were slowly turning blue again. The poisoned clouds were clearing, replaced by clean air that could support life. Your people saved us, Morgeth said quietly. But more than that, you changed us. We believed that strength came from standing alone. You showed us that true strength comes from standing together. We learned from you too, Dae-Ho replied. Human determination combined with Kelthari knowledge created something neither of us could have built alone. Morgeth nodded. The galaxy will not forget this. The image of your soldier sharing his air with our child, that picture is being seen by every civilization in known space. You have shown them what they chose not to be. As they watched, a new signal came through on the communication system. Another distress call, this time from a system on the far side of the galaxy. A young civilization facing destruction from an asteroid impact. Dae-Ho looked at the message, then at Morgeth. What do you think, Elder? Should we respond? Morgeth smiled, an expression that came easier to him now than it had before meeting humans. Captain Kim, I believe it is time for the galaxy to learn a new way of doing things. The joint human-Kelthari fleet that departed Volanus Prime 3 days later was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from both species, working together, as equals, carrying the message that help should be given freely to anyone who needed it. The age of galactic indifference was ending. The age of compassion had begun. The joint human-Kelthari fleet arrived at the Corvin system to find chaos. The young Corvin civilization had detected the massive asteroid 6 months ago, but their technology was too primitive to stop it. Their desperate calls for help had been ignored by every major power in the galaxy, just as the Kelthari distress signal had been ignored. But this time, help had come. Captain Dae-Ho Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, now equipped with Kelthari navigation systems that made it faster and more efficient than any ship in the human fleet had ever been. Beside him, Elder Morgeth operated controls that would have been impossible for human hands to use. Asteroid impact in 72 hours, reported Dr. Minho Jiang. The object is 12 kilometers across. Impact would cause global extinction. Can we stop it? Dae-Ho asked. Human explosives are powerful enough to break it apart, said Kelthari engineer Kethara Zil. But Kelthari precision guidance systems can ensure the fragments miss the planet entirely. Working together, they could do what neither species could accomplish alone. It was becoming a familiar pattern. The asteroid deflection took 36 hours. Human heavy equipment broke the massive rock into smaller pieces, while Kelthari gravity manipulators guided each fragment into safe trajectories. When it was over, the Corvin homeworld was safe. The grateful Corvin leader, speaking through primitive radio communications, asked why the human Kelthari fleet had come to help them. Because you needed help, Ambassador Tae-Young Shin replied. That is reason enough. The rescue mission became galactic news within days. For the second time, humanity and its new Kelthari partners had crossed the galaxy to help strangers with no expectation of reward. The message was impossible to ignore. There was a new alliance in the galaxy, and it operated by different rules than anyone else. The political response was immediate and dramatic. The Zephyrian Empire, which had dismissed 2 separate pleas for help, suddenly announced the formation of the Galactic Humanitarian Council and claimed they had been planning to provide aid all along. Their emperor gave speeches about the importance of helping younger species, carefully avoiding any mention of their previous indifference. The Crystalline Collective performed complex calculations and concluded that association with humanitarian missions provided significant political benefits. They offered to contribute ships and resources to future rescue operations, though they made sure to emphasize that their help came with conditions and expected returns. The Void Swimmers, who had never shown interest in planetary civilizations, suddenly began offering their unique transportation abilities to move refugees and supplies. They claimed it was for research purposes, but everyone understood the real reason. They did not want to be left out of the new galactic order. But the most significant response came from the ethereal councils. The collective voice manifested aboard the UES Harmony as patterns of shifting light and energy. Dr. Hana Yoon served as translator, though the ancient beings communicated more through concepts than words. We have observed your species for only a brief time, the collective voice said, but you have accomplished something we believed impossible. What is that? Tae-Young asked. You have reminded the galaxy of something it had forgotten. That civilization is measured not by power or knowledge, but by willingness to help others. The collective voice paused, its energy patterns shifting to colors that seemed to represent sadness. We are very old, Ambassador Shin. We have existed since before your son was born. In all that time, we have seen thousands of species rise to spacefaring status. Almost all follow the same pattern. They begin with cooperation and compassion. But as they grow powerful, they become selfish and isolated. We assumed this was natural law, that survival in space required abandoning mercy. So when the Kelthari called for help, we calculated that responding would be inefficient. When young species face extinction, we determine whether they are worthy of continued existence. Tae-young felt cold understanding wash over her. You let species die as a test? We thought we were being wise. We believed that mercy was weakness, that compassion was inefficiency. Your species has proven us wrong. The ancient being's energy patterns shifted again, this time to colors that seemed like shame. We ignored the Kelthari plea because we judged them unworthy. But worthiness was never the question, was it? The question was whether we still remembered what it meant to care about life. What will you do now? Tae-young asked. We will try to remember what we have forgotten, and we will ensure that no plea for help goes unanswered again. The transformation that followed changed the galaxy forever. The Volonis Accords were signed by representatives of 47 different civilizations. The treaty established the principle that all spacefaring species had an obligation to provide aid during planetary emergencies, regardless of politics, past grievances, or expected benefits. Humanity, the youngest spacefaring civilization in the galaxy, became the moral center of the new alliance. Human ships joined by vessels from dozens of other species began responding to distress calls throughout known space. The Kelthari, transformed by their contact with humanity, became the technical leaders of humanitarian missions. Their precision technology, combined with human determination and resources from other species, created rescue capabilities beyond anything previously imagined. But the most important change was not technological or political. It was philosophical. Species that had spent millennia focused only on their own advancement began looking outward. The image of Jinwoo Choi sharing his air with little Veltar Mon had spread to every corner of the galaxy, becoming a symbol of what civilized beings should aspire to be. Dr. Min-ho Jang led the development of new hybrid technologies that combined the best features of multiple species science. Atmospheric processors that could terraform dead worlds, medical systems that could treat any known form of life, transportation networks that could evacuate entire planetary populations in days instead of years. The galaxy was becoming a place where help was freely given and gratefully received. 5 years after the first human ship arrived at Volanus Prime, Captain Daeho Kim retired from active service to become director of the Galactic Emergency Response Alliance. His headquarters was a space station built jointly by humans and Kelthari, orbiting a star chosen specifically because it could be reached quickly from anywhere in the galaxy. On his final day as a ship captain, Daeho stood on the observation deck of the UES Harmony, looking out at the fleet assembled for the next rescue mission. Human ships flew alongside Kelthari vessels, Zephyrian cruisers, crystalline platforms, and even the exotic craft of the Void Swimmers. Elder Morgeth joined him at the viewport. The old Kelthari leader had become more than an ally. He had become a friend. "Do you remember what you asked me when we first met?" Morgeth said. "You asked how you could help. Such a simple question, but it changed everything." "It was not complicated," Daeho replied. "You needed help. We helped." But that is exactly what made it revolutionary. For thousands of years, the galaxy operated on complex calculations of benefit and cost. Species helped others only when they gained something in return. You helped us simply because it was the right thing to do. Morgeth gestured toward the mixed fleet preparing to depart. Look what that simple choice has created. dozens of species working together, sharing technology and resources, making the galaxy a safer place for everyone. The galaxy was ready. For this, Deho said, it just needed someone to show the way. Perhaps. Or perhaps the galaxy needed to be reminded that mercy is not weakness, that compassion is not inefficiency. Your species taught us that the strongest civilizations are not those that stand alone, but those that help others stand. As they watched, the joint fleet engaged their faster-than-light drives and disappeared into hyperspace, racing toward another world in need. It was a sight that would have been impossible just a few years ago. Dozens of species united not by conquest or trade agreements, but by the simple principle that when someone calls for help, you answer. The communication panel chimed with a new message, another distress signal from somewhere in the galaxy, another species facing extinction, crying out for salvation. Deho smiled and reached for the response controls. The message he sent was simple, transmitted in every known language. We have received your signal. Help is coming. In the depths of space, the collective voice of the ethereal councils observed the galaxy with patterns of light that might have been satisfaction. For millions of years, they had watched civilizations rise and fall, become powerful and cruel, forget what it meant to care about others. But now something new was happening. Species were learning to work together instead of competing. Technology was being shared instead of hoarded. Help was being given freely instead of sold for profit. The galaxy was growing up, and at the center of it all was a young species that had never forgotten a simple truth, that when someone needs help, you help them. No calculations required. No conditions attached. No questions asked. The age of indifference was over. The age of compassion had begun, and it had all started with a simple plea that reached across the galaxy, and the one species that chose to answer. The humans had not. Just saved the Kelthari. They had saved the galaxy's soul.